HR, we get away with a lot of shit. Things be locked up.
Yeah, I wish y'all could have been there, but it was too much going on. Mel, we said Mel.
Tell me what happened, though.
Yeah, no, because we might even talk about it before up here. But when we sent Mel to HR, like to talk to him, Mel, like, before she went, oh my God, the culture, I don't know what's going on, and if you don't do something about those guys, right? We said, you know what, this is real.
Yo, fix your laptop, that shit about to fall.
We said, yo, this is real.
Oh, this serious?
Yeah. This is serious. Let's send Mel to HR. When Mel, and it was a woman, black woman, when she left HR, she was like, yeah, you know what? I think me and the guys can work it out. I think me and the guys can fix it ourselves.
You did say this before.
I love Mel. I absolutely love Mel.
Shout out.
Mel is the greatest.
HR talked you off the ledge?
I say,
no, it wasn't.
They came to
that.
understanding.
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that.
What happened?
Well, what was it?
It was her suggestions. I was like, you know what? On second thought, I'm gonna save them. I'm gonna save.
You saved us. Are you Mel?
I'm just not.
Melissa,
you didn't even have a conversation with the lady, so shut up. You don't even know.
But I was beat. Melissa, look at me. Saved us.
She wanted to go in like a direction where I was like, you know what? Let me just reel this.
Mel, you know you would have been on the chopping block too, right? You know, and whatever you involved in is worse than anything that me or H could do.
Look,
I wasn't a part of shit.
Yo, wait, stop.
We are rehashing old things.
Why he keep thinking he wasn't a part?
I wasn't a part of shit. I ain't see nobody in HR.
Stop. Nobody told Ish?
Oh my God.
Stop playing my man now. All right. Ish, you didn't know?
I wasn't a part of nothing.
No,
Flip is the best thing on
no,
the planet.
because I had the argument. I had the argument with Ian about why we gotta go. Because I swear to God, no, wait, time out. It's not in that.
There's a peculiar rhythm to confession in public life. Some confessions arrive as apologies, cloaked in the language of contrition, delivered with the careful calculation of a press release. Others arrive as performance, stage revelations meant to shock an audience and generate the churn of headlines. And then there are confessions that erupt in the middle of laughter, carried by the current of conversation until suddenly everyone present realizes the weight of what has been said. What unfolded when Joe Budden recalled sending Melyssa Ford to Human Resources belonged to this last category. It was not staged. It was not polished. It was the kind of disclosure that reminds us how fragile the borders are between friendship, work, and spectacle. It began as a casual recollection, a story meant to illustrate the tensions that arise when men accustomed to unfiltered speech find themselves brushing against institutional boundaries. It became something heavier when Melyssa revealed that she had chosen not to follow the advice she received. Her refusal to transform grievance into lawsuit astonished the men around her. Their shock was not merely about the possibility of litigation. It was about the realization that beneath the jokes and familiarity, the dynamics of power and harm in their workplace had been serious enough to warrant that possibility. The exchange revealed much about the fragility of creative collectives. The Joe Budden podcast has always lived at the edge of informality. Its intimacy is its currency. The men speak as though they are on couches in a living room rather than behind microphones with millions listening. But intimacy is not immunity. When a workplace is built on friendship, when the line between family and colleagues blurs, harm becomes both easier to commit and harder to address. What feels like banter to one can feel like violation to another. In those moments, the safety net is supposed to be human resources, a structure designed to protect workers from the excesses of bosses and peers alike. But anyone who has worked inside large institutions knows that HR is rarely neutral. For workers, especially women of color, HR can be both shield and trap. On the surface, it offers process, accountability, the promise that complaints will be heard. In practice, it often exists to protect the company more than the worker. This dual function produces a deep ambivalence. To go to HR is to risk being branded as difficult, to risk isolation, to risk retaliation cloaked in the language of restructuring or creative differences. To follow HR's advice and escalate to court is to declare war not only on an employer, but on a community. Melyssa's decision not to sue must be understood in that context. It was not simply the act of a woman forgiving harm. It was a calculation shaped by gender, by race, by the knowledge of how women, particularly black women, are punished when they assert their rights too forcefully. To take HR's advice would have been to step into an arena where she would have been pitted not only against Joe Budden, but against the machinery of public perception. She would have been cast as litigious, opportunistic, ungrateful. She would have risked being reduced to the caricature of the angry black woman, a role that even the most accomplished and graceful among us cannot escape once it is projected onto them. Her refusal, then, was not weakness. It was a choice born of self-preservation and of a loyalty that may seem irrational to outsiders, but makes perfect sense to those who have lived inside fragile collectives. To sue would have been to burn the house down. To stay was to keep living in a house whose beams already carried cracks. The men's shock at her revelation was a measure of their blindness. They had not fully grasped how close they had come to collapse, how much her restraint had protected not just Joe, but all of them. There is a particular arrogance in male-dominated spaces, a confidence that laughter absolves harm. The podcast thrives on humor, on ridicule, on testing one another's limits. For the men, this ritual is bonding. For a woman in that space, the ritual is different. She must calculate each barb, each story, each interruption through a different lens. She must carry the awareness that her presence is exceptional, that she represents a minority not only of gender, but of perspective. When the jokes turn sharp, when the atmosphere turns hostile, she does not have the luxury of shrugging it off as just another day in the locker room. Joe's retelling of the HR referral was not malicious. It was cavalier. Cavalier is his default mode. He wields memory as anecdote, often forgetting that the moments he finds amusing are freighted with consequences for others. Yet even his cavalier tone could not erase the gravity of Melyssa's choice. In revealing that she had declined to pursue legal action, she exposed the imbalance at the heart of their enterprise. The men could afford to be reckless because she had chosen restraint. The laughter that followed her revelation was nervous. It carried the jagged edge of recognition. They knew, even if only for a moment, how differently things might have gone. They glimpsed the abyss over which they had been dancing. And then, as always, they retreated into humor, because humor is the only way men in such spaces know how to metabolize fear. This moment belongs to a larger story about gender and accountability in hip-hop culture. For decades, women have navigated an industry where their labor is consumed, but their grievances are silenced. They are often told to be grateful for proximity to power, to accept the rough edges of male genius as part of the cost of entry. Those who refuse are punished, dismissed, replaced. Those who endure are celebrated only for their endurance, not for the harm they survived. Melyssa Ford has lived this reality across multiple arenas, as a model, as a media personality, as a podcast host. Her decision not to sue is part of that lineage of endurance, a lineage that is both heroic and tragic. Is tempting to frame her restraint as loyalty to Joe, as evidence of affection that transcended conflict. But loyalty is never simple. In workplaces that blur the line between family and colleagues, loyalty is often demanded as a condition of survival. To betray the group is to risk exile. To stay silent is to remain in community. Melyssa chose community. Whether that choice was empowering or coercive is less important than recognizing that it was not freely made. No choice made under structural inequality is ever fully free. Joe's astonishment was real. For once, the man who thrives on provocation found himself provoked. The revelation disrupted his narrative of control. He had believed that HR was a detour, a formality, a way to acknowledge complaint without consequence. To learn that the consequence had been real, that the advice had been to escalate to court, was to confront the fact that his project, his livelihood, had been one decision away from collapse. The others in the room shared his shock. Their laughter masked a recognition that they, too, had been implicated. Harm in a collective is rarely the work of one alone.